So I've done a lot. I've done like 2 full streams on getting started with the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript components session. That'll be a DevSummit in like 3 weeks, something like that. I don't know, man. Less than a month away. I have a couple other sessions, programming patterns and fundamentals, which is one that I need to work on some more this week, which I'll be doing, and I'll get that outlined in here too. I'm also doing another one though with Randy Jones that I think it's pretty good to kind of transition to from this getting started with components into best practices for building apps, because there's going to be some things that I show in the components which are going to carry over to this one, I think. And Randy does a lot of this stuff too. Randy's in professional services and he works with a lot of customers on building apps and stuff, so he's gonna have some really great input on this. This is just my stuff I want to do, and we haven't really nailed down sections and who's going to do what just yet. But he's got some stuff he's working on too. So, all right, let's see the description here. Learn how to use the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript, of course, to build your own custom apps. I mean, that's essentially what it is. So we're going to cover patterns and tooling for building applications that can be used across various frameworks. Now, I did mention there's also a programming patterns and fundamentals session too. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap in there, but this is more of like how you would apply those patterns of fundamentals, most likely into your application, right? So there's a link to the agenda here. And maybe I should, I don't know, at some point, maybe this week, I'll share out this document with everything here. It's still pretty rough. This one is. I think the map component one is pretty nailed down at this point. I want to tweak it a little bit. This one's a little bit rough because I haven't, Randy and I have only gone over it like a couple of times so far. Who's it for? People that are familiar with the Maps SDK for JavaScript, right? I mean, this isn't necessarily a beginner session, right? You've got to kind of have some experience with it, some development experience, right? We're not going to cover basic stuff here, so I'm kind of leaning on the fact that you maybe have at least attempted to build an app before, done some app work in the past. So some web development experience or professionals with development experience. This would be people that maybe have I'm thinking people that maybe have like used Experience Builder and tried to build some like widgets to go with Experience Builder or something, or maybe you are involved in any other ArcGIS development and you want to get involved here. So things that we're gonna probably be talking about in the first section is this idea about your options for tooling to build modern apps, right? So one thing that I think me and Randy are both pretty adamant about is that if you've already got something in place, then it works for you, so continue using it, right? Whatever your build is using is probably just fine, right? There's plenty of people out there still using like Grunt to run certain tasks, or Gulp. And really in a lot of ways, Gulp and Grunt are kind of like modern day makefiles, right? You pretty much are doing things in steps, and they're very configurable and they're still very useful. There's nothing that prevents you from using Grunt or Gulp to run like a roll-up build and then do some kind of post-build process. Maybe you got a bunch of pre-built processes and you want to do for your builds, right? So they're just task runners is all they are. They're not like Rollup or Webpack or anything like that. They're task runners. Randy had the idea of talking about IDEs, right? So I think that was a good point. Like what kind of IDEs are people going to use? So there's like WebStorm, which is like full blown, like awesome. Like know a couple of people at work that are using like IntelliJ to do things. I really would like to use PHP Storm for some PHP stuff that I work on because I really like Laravel, and just getting Vim set up with Laravel. I know I'm not getting the most out of it. I really wish I were, but I know I'm not. And I think there's a lot of really cool features I've seen in PHP Storm for that. So I would do that if I could. Of course, VS Code, and then Vim, or I should say NeoVim. That's where I sit. Talk about LSPs, TypeScript, if you care about TypeScript or not. Big TypeScript proponent, but I'm not gonna not gonna force it. Then we're gonna talk about things like linting, how you could do that, manage that in your application, along with prettier and formatting and stuff like that. Which these are the kind of things that if you're building an app or doing any kind of modern web development, is just kind of like a thing that you would come across, right? So patterns for the Maps SDK for JavaScript. So this is where some of the pieces from my patterns of fundamental are probably going to come in as well. We had this idea about thin client considerations. We have a lot of customers that are still using the Maps SDK on thin clients, so therefore they're building apps for thin clients or something. I don't work with that too much, but Andy Gupp on the team does. He does a lot of work with customers with that. He does a lot of testing to see how things are going to work, especially with some of the new WebGL, WebGPU stuff that is in the Maps SDK. That there are considerations for thin clients. Everything works. There's stuff built into like 3D scenes to kind of gauge the quality of your scene based on the work that can be done. So that's really cool, actually, the way it kind of does that. Lazy loading modules. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to go through an app that does that, as well as limit assets per page and how you can manage your map state between routes. I don't know. Maybe the manage map state between routes might be a bit more than I can get in to a particular app, but we'll see. We'll see if we can do it. Basics of authentication, right? So I can't remember if I told Randy I'd work on this one or not. I might have. But yeah, we're going to talk about identity manager, API keys, when you can use one or the other, who should use one or the other. The type of org that you have in online determines what you should use, what you shouldn't use, what you even could use, right? So there's bits to that. And then I'm going to cover some basics of map components. I can't really talk about app development without really talking about map components for stuff, right? So I'm going to work them in where I work them in because they're going to be out. This is still beta and everything and all that, but they'll be in the usable state, and we're going to be taking feedback. So yeah, don't worry about it. We got stuff going. Okay, so I'm going to go and work on the React demo part. Well, as far as schedule, I don't know yet. I haven't worked it out yet. I haven't gotten that far. Okay, so I've got a NextJS application over here that I need to tweak, right? So let's do this. So of course I need the map components, the React map components. I got everything I need. I already pre-installed the I'm sorry, I already got the NextJS app up and running, but what I haven't done is I have not gotten like the full structure set. So it's still the default app layout, right? Is all default. So let's just go ahead and change some of this stuff here. Let's call this ArcGIS Map. Right? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? All right. So I call this a power plants app because I have an app I've done in the past that basically is like a 2-page app. You have your main page, which is going to provide you with the list of power plants. And then another page, when you click on a power plant, it's going to open the map and it's going to filter down to just those power plants, right? So that's kind of what I want to get done in here. I'm trying to think if I should go to like the more advanced bit than simple. So let's do this. Let's do, because I'm going to do copy pasting here, copy pasta, because I've already, gonna be honest with you, I've worked through this app already once and I've got it done. What if I just show you it done instead of like going through the whole thing? I kind of want to show the whole thing. I think when I do the session, I'm not going to do it from scratch, right? Step by step. I will go through it in steps. So it's good for me to practice going through like what it would be like so I can reiterate to myself of the steps needed to build the app, right? So first thing I want to do is I need to get the results of my query. So we're at the root. Do I want to set the root? No, I want this in the app. We're going to create a utils file. And here's my utils file. Okay. What I have here is I'm importing the cache helper or cache module from React. I'll explain that in a second. I've got my config from ArcGIS Core, and I'm bringing in the execute query JSON from ArcGIS Core REST query. The reason I bring the config is you want to turn off authentication. You want to turn off the identity manager. So I set use identity to false because the identity manager is not going to work in a node environment, but all the requests and everything else can, right? So I could create a layer or even a web map and stuff inside of a node or Dino or whatever environment that I want, and work with it, query it, do all kinds of really cool stuff. In this case, I'm just going to make a request to a feature service, and I know that it's not behind authentication, so it's just going to work. And then what I do is I have a function here called get power plants, and I'm going to run it through the cache function first. This is basically cache in React. I think this is new, like well, I don't want to say brand new, but it's fairly new feature in React, where it's basically going to memoize the execution of this function, and it's good for, I believe, just that session. I want to say this is session based, but it's just like when I open the browser, if I close it and come back in, the cache is gone. But I'll show you how you can set that to like 1 hour or something like that in a second here. So this query is pretty basic. I have the outfields is this one field I want that's going to have the types of the power plants. 1 equals 1 because I want them all. That's kind of how you do it. I want distinct values, and I don't care about geometry, so we're not going to return any geometry, right? Then I get my results with the URL and the query. Then I'm going to take those results, I'm going to map them. I'm going to pull out just the value of the field. I don't care about the field name. I just want the actual value from the field. I'm going to filter out any kind of null values. There are a few that are empty. I want to get rid of them. So just pass them a Boolean and then sort them, so they're all sorted for me when I send them back. Then I create a data object with the types, and then I'm going to return that data object. And that's it. That's all I need to do for the request of the power plants. And I want this to happen on the first page load. I have a page. I also need components. So components go in the root. I think that's standard. Yeah, I don't think it matters. I could probably put them in the app folder, but I think it kind of mess with routing if someone goes a certain route. I don't know. I always just put them in the root because I don't want to mess around, man. I'm not here for that kind of play. Okay, so we're gonna call this power plants. Okay, there we go. These React errors always pop up the first time, and then like, I don't know, things kick in and they go away. Look at that. My LSP is just a little short there. Okay, so the plants are going to be a component. I'm going to import this link from Next.js, and this is how you can manage routing in a Next app. Manage things a little bit better to make sure things go where they go. It's also going to allow me to pass slugs, which are going to be important, which we'll see later on, right? So it's a unordered list. I've got all my flex already defined here. I map over the values. I get the index. I need to add this this key. Of course, you do any React stuff, you need those keys, man. And then here is where I'm going to map. I'm going to provide a link to the map route with the values. So it's going to look like you'll see it like map/oil or map/solar, right? So that then I use that value. The solar part is going to be the slug, and that's going to define how I filter out the layer when I show the map. And we'll see that in a second here. So okay, so power plants looks good. I put the value in there, no big deal. It's pretty simple. This isn't very complicated here, people. Right? I mean, I don't think so. It's not complicated at all. Which kind of why I like this demo. I think it shows a lot that you can do, but doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily an overcomplicated kind of demo, right? So this default page has so much stuff. Oh, okay. Look at that. Look at that. Got rid of everything here. Okay, so I import my power plants component. Here's I get power plants functions. This is that function I've got that goes ahead and sorry, one second. That goes ahead and does the request for the layer, and it does that cache from React, right? I said before that cache is very short-lived, right? So if I close the browser, come back again, the server's gonna make a brand new request for the data. I can increase that cache to 3600. You export this const to revalidate, and you give it a milliseconds time. So this is 1 hour right here. Seconds, 3600 seconds is 1 hour, right? I think I'm right. I got this from the doc, so bear with me there. So, okay, so that you export that out, and it knows that it's going to use that for its revalidation. So every hour, it's going to go ahead and flush the cache and request new data. Awesome. Okay, so this is a React server component. It is the home route for the page. Oh, it's the main page route, right? So got the layout, and you got the home route. So this is where the home route goes. And it's pretty cool. It's async. I can do async React server components. That's what they're for, where you can do fetching of data. So you don't use effect. You can't use effect inside React server components. It's just the way React works. I think I talked about this last time I talked about map components with React. It's just, you can't do it. So I can go ahead and just fetch some data here and then use it. So I fetch my data for the power plants, and then I pass that data to that power plants component, and it's going to render everything out for me. Here, npm run dev. So we got some results. Awesome. Okay, we got results going on here. Yeah, so this is gonna biomass, coal, cogeneration, gas, geothermal, hydro, nuclear, oil. If I click it, it goes to this map oil route, and I haven't created a map route yet. So NextJS is still using Webpack under the hood. There is an option to use TurboPack with it, but it did not work for me with ArcGIS Core. I shouldn't say it didn't work. It just never finished compiling. I sat there for like 8 minutes waiting for the compile to happen. It just didn't finish. So I think there's just too much stuff happening with ArcGIS Core for TurboPack to really work at the moment. So I'm just using regular Webpack builds. So they're not exactly the fastest. And when I get to the map page, I might just sit here and read you a book for a bit. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so here is the list, and now we're going to go ahead and do the map route. Okay, so the way that you do stuff like these routes in, oh, come on, man. Okay, here we go. Sorry. And this is why I use Vim, because I can't use a mouse. I don't know what I'm doing. I can barely type either, so I don't want to talk crap. So I'm in my app folder. This is app routing in Next.js, right? So I need a route for map. So that's easy. I'll create map. I also want a catch-all route, right? And the name here doesn't necessarily, it doesn't matter in so much the sense other than context, right? So this could be ID, right? It could be ID, could be name or slug, which I prefer to use slug. So we're going to go and say that the folder name is slug, like so. And then inside there, I have page.tsx. So the page.tsx is the Next.js equivalent of an index.tsx. It's like the home page for a route. So map oil, or sorry, map/oil, oil will be the slug, and this is how it's going to render that, right? So, and then that slug importing, so I'm going to use that to grab some information stuff. So because this is going to be a component that shows a map, so there's WebGL involved, there's Canvas involved, and all this stuff, has to be a use client component, because I need use effect in this case. I can simplify this out. I can make a map component separate, like a client map component, and put it alongside that power plants component, and then load that. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just kind of showing you that if you have a page and it needs the map or any kind of interactivity, really, you need to use client, right? So if you have to have state, like you need use state, or you have to use effect for your page, it has to be a use client component. So you put that at the top here. The page is built for you on the server, but it's hydrated and everything on the client, right? So that's where all the JavaScript stuff is going to run. Enough of that. So, okay, so I'm bringing the dark theme in here because I only care about the ArcGIS CSS on this page. So I only bring it in on this page. Lazy loading your resources, or actually it's not lazy loading resources. This is going to be more of the limit assets per page part of this discussion, right? So I only care about, oh, wrong one. I only care about CSS for this page, so I only import it for this page. And the same goes for these React components. I'm going to use expand, legend, and map. I only care about them here. I'm only going to import them here. I have a feature layer and I have the config again. Now, yes, I imported config earlier, but that was for the server side rendered page. This is not the same config that's going to be used in the client. Two separate ones, right? One running on the server, one running in the client. They know nothing about each other. So I need to set my API key here. I bring in the layer, feature layer, and I'm going to use useEffect and use ref. Don't necessarily need useRef, but I think it's good practice in React, instead of accessing like event.target, which you still could. Nothing's gonna stop me from using event.target, but I think it's better Reactness to use useRef for things like that. Okay, so let me do one thing here. I need my API key. So I just have an API key I created. Geez, look at that. Updated it in June of 23. So this last year, not too bad. How do we get it? Here we go. Copy my key. Okay, yeah, come over here. And I probably have to restart my app. Okay, so I'm at the root .env.local. So yeah, I've got this plugin here that cloaks my environment keys so you guys can't steal my stuff. All right, let's go back to my map slug here. Let's go ahead and restart this here. Oh, I think I loaded it. Reload env. Okay, so okay, recompile, reload. Okay, all right. That's cool. That's cool. I know it's gonna do that for me. Okay, so I set my API key, and that's because I'm using a API key base map, which you should be using. I think I've got my function as a web map. Since it's a client, use client component, the page. I can't make it async. It has to be regular function. But the key part here is that what's cool when you use something in Next is you get these parameters that are getting passed to your component. So I'm getting a slug because I call it the folder slug. So it's map/slug as a property. So map/oil, right? So slug is going to be equal to whatever's in the URL for my stuff, which is really cool. I like that because if not, I gotta start, unless it's query parameters, but then they wouldn't be like slugs. I have to start parsing the path, and I don't want to do that, man. Come on, just make my life a little easier, and I'm cool with it. Now, there's some stuff here I want to do to highlight some things you can do with React you can't do with native web components in a vanilla web component app, right? So because these are they're web components, but they're wrapped as React elements, you can take advantage of some React-y stuff under the hood. So I create this pop-up options object, which basically just says that I want to dock. If I click on the map, I want the pop-up automatically docked to the top right. Regardless, just dock it to the top right. No breakpoints, nothing like that. Turn off the dock button. Just, yeah, whatever. I don't care. And I got a use effect in here. This is like what I showed my last video, where inside the use effect, I'm going to import the define custom elements, lazy load it, and then run it when the page loads. So this is kind of lazy load some stuff under the hood. I got this function here to handle view ready. So when the component loads and the component's ready to go, what I want to do is I want to create a new layer. And I'm going to use a portal item that I know. I create a layer for the portal item. My definition expression is going to be the slug that I got. So fuel, remember fuel 1 was a field that I requested data from on the server side to get that list, like biomass and all that nonsense. And now I want to filter the layer to what I selected. So fuel 1 equals, I have to decode URI the value because there's one value on the list. I think it's like wind and water, maybe. This wave and tidal. That was it. Wave and tidal. That one value, wave and tidal, there is your. It's an encoded URL when it's in the URL bar, right? So when the slug comes back, it's got that like %20 in there, and that's not, you can't filter on that. So I need to decode that to make them spaces again, and use that for my definition expression. So don't let those things catch you, right? I could have gone through this whole thing of turning them into kebab case and then converting them from Bob case to not necessarily camel case, but camel case with spacings. And I felt like there's a lot of things that could go wrong with that much conversion. It's probably just simpler to do a decode URI method in here, right? And I want the layer visible. I think by default this layer is not visible, so I want to make it visible. And then I just go ahead and add to the map. Notice I'm grabbing the map element, which I've made equal to the map ref.current. So at this point, I have the ref. I just want the current value from the ref, so I'm doing that. And now I can access the map on there and add the layer. And then when the layer is done doing what the layer has to do, so the layer loads and I've got all the information here, I create a query, because when you do layer.create query, the definition expression that I define on the layer is going to be part of the query. And then I'm going to query the extent for the layer. So if there's only a handful of power plants, say there's one of these, there's only like a few in the United States. Well, I shouldn't say a few, but they're just in like the United States, and I want that extent. So when I load the map, it's going to zoom to that extent, not a global extent, right? So that's why I do here. I do map element I go to. So what does component look like here, right? So pretty basic. There's my map ref. I've got my base map in here to the ArcGIS start gray. I pass my pop-up options directly to the pop-up method here. Same way you do it if you created a new map view inside of a vanilla JavaScript application. And then we have on ArcGIS view ready change. So this is the ArcGIS view ready change of the map component. But when you use React, it adds that on to the front of it, and it's all camel case after that. So it's on ArcGIS view ready change. That's when the handle view ready happens, right? So, and again, I just add my expand in here to the bottom left, and it's going to have a legend inside of it. Okay, let's see if this is this gonna work. Let's see if this works. Man, okay, so I don't know, man. Empty cache and reload. All right, so I'm reloading. Oh, I reloaded. Okay. All right, let's go for solar. Here we go. Okay. Boom. Here we go. So we're set. So we've got solar. And here is my legend. If I click on one of these here, you'll see the pop-up now is going to come up here by default to the edge. So you can, unlike vanilla components in React, I can pass an object like the pop-up options to the React component, and it'll apply it. Because what under the hood what really happens is it's going to create the VDOM stuff it needs to do, and then when it creates the actual DOM elements, it'll apply those properties that you're setting here to the DOM element, and then add them to the page. I believe that's steps it takes. So properties get applied first, then the element is appended to the page or wherever the DOM it's supposed to go, and then the web component is going to hydrate. So the component's going to see, oh, you have this pop-up object defined. It's an object, not a string number. I see that in the components, and we just apply it to the view underneath to do all the work that it needs to do. You couldn't do that in vanilla JavaScript because it's already on the page. You don't have a way to send objects to the DOM like that, right? The DOM doesn't work like that. But React, you can, because it's fake DOM. That's kind of a cool feature you can do there. You don't think if you noticed it when it first loaded, so let's come back. Great, it loaded pretty quick. So it comes here and then zooms to the US. So this is where the pet coke, petroleum coke based plants are going to be located, right? So there's only 3 here. Yeah, here's so fuel type pet coke and fuel type pet coke, a petroleum based energy source, right? So yeah, so you can see how we're able to zoom the map like that. So I mean, that's the gist of it for this app. There's more to it than that. I actually do add a header to this page in the home page, so you can go back to the home page from here. It might just be easier to have like a home link in the header, but I didn't do easy. I won't show that here, but I'll show in DevSummit how that header is going to work and everything. But I think this is very cool, right? And this kind of highlights everything I really like to show on apps like this, because this page is fast. The query is done on the server, and once it's cached, the query is instantaneous. It generates the HTML page for me and then sends it right to the client. Right, so I get this page like instantaneously. It's like if you ran this page built for production through Lighthouse, you get like 100% across the board for everything, right? Which is really kind of cool. And if you ran, so I mean, there's always so much you can do with map stuff when it loads, right? So biomass, let's try that. This page is gonna be as fast as any other Maps SDK built page, right? Because again, I mean, the JavaScript to build an interactive map, I mean, it's not like a little bit, especially with all the WebGL involved, drawing to the canvas and stuff, the different modules you can bring in, feature layers and things like that. I mean, it's JavaScript to processor, right? And there's a lot of calculations going on for projections and stuff if the data is not projected correctly, or it's a different projection from the base map or something like that when you bring it in. There are different pieces here and there that might slow things down. So you could probably get a good 65, maybe 70 performance score on most Lighthouse tests on here, but then everything else could be like 100 because it'll have good SEO, good accessibility, because the components have great accessibility and stuff built into them. So yeah, so this is probably the demo I'm going to use for the session here, building best practices for building apps, because I think it shows it has lazy loading modules as needed, limits the assets per page. I'm currently not managing map state. Now, I think it's something I could do, but with Next.js and the way I'm doing it, right, if I want to take advantage of the server-side rendering of the pages, I would need to have some kind of a database behind the hood. It doesn't have to be a powerful one. It doesn't have to be big either. It could probably be just a NoSQL database even behind the hood, maybe like DynamoDB or something like that. Or I could just use Supabase with a very small Postgres database behind it, where I want to save the current session ID. I'm guessing. Is that the way I do it? Session ID, and then the JSON string of the current extent of my map. So then when I come back to it, the server would hit that page, or sorry, the server would see that I'm going back to the map/biomass. It would, before it sends the HTML to me, it's going to go look at the database for my session ID, find the last extent I was at, and then it's going to go ahead and maybe I would add it to the page somehow, and then use that to zoom the map, or pass it in the header, right? So I think the header is probably the way I might end up doing it. But it's a lot of work, because then what I need to do, that's not a lot of work, but I think there's a lot of, it's a very chatty app, right? Because as I pan my map around, I'll probably want to save the last extent I use. So now I need to send a post request out to set to update the session ID, my session ID on the database with my current extent or the last extent I was just at. So things get very chatty, right? I'm sending a lot of data that probably doesn't need to get sent, and I don't even know if it's worth it for the application. Although I might do something where it's all local storage based, right? Maybe I just save it to local storage. That's another thing maybe I could show too. I don't know, I think it's better. The only reason I would probably show the updating to a database like that is the opportunity to show how to use actions in a Next.js app. But again, that gets very specific to Next.js. I really just I wanted to show the parts of Next.js which I think are useful, that people can build all their apps around, which is the caching of requests in the server and the routing. Right? I think the routing part can be carried over to pretty much any framework, even like Next.js, something like that, with Vue or something, right? And then Angular, same thing. You have assets loaded to particular pages, you load them as needed here in particular routes and things like that, right? So I think that's why I want to use Next.js for this, because I could do it here and I think it carries over a lot. But then when I start getting into actions, I think that's very Next.js specific, and I didn't want to tie myself into that of people to get to. I do have a demo. I won't can't show it now. I don't have it ready to go, but I'll probably show the map components one too when I start talking about like components everywhere type of thing, where I have it running in a React app, Vue app. Of course, we have Angular. I don't know if I have an Angular app yet, but I even have it running in PHP Laravel, right? So just show that it runs everywhere. I'm looking at maybe a couple more. I don't know. We'll see. But again, you get components anywhere, right? And I think the React wrappers for the components are going to be really useful for stuff like this. So yeah, that'll be fun. I'm still working through this building apps session, some details, kind of like what exactly we want to talk about. Where, I mean, these are realistically, these sessions are only 45 minutes. So it's not like you can get super detailed on everything. You could probably do a 45-minute session just on the authentication stuff, right? I mean, when you really want to like dig into it. But yeah, I think just try and show some best practices stuff, and that goes into everything I listed out here. And Randy and I might tweak this list a little bit and then figure out who's going to do what before DevSummit. We are going to tweak it and figure out who's going to do what. But yeah, that's where I'm at so far. That's the app I have so far too. If you guys got any ideas or anything like that you want to see for a session like this, then let me know. Let me know what you think you would like to see in a session about best practices for building apps with the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript, right? And of course, I use components, but I might show some stuff that's non-component based too and everything. So yeah, just hit me up and let me know. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.